Let's catch up now with former MP Sir Gerald Howarth, who joins us in the studio. You were in the Commons for a long time. Have you ever seen political drama like this, Sir Gerald?
Oh, yes, of course, Mark. We've seen all this before.
Thatcher in 1990, her defenestration, I suppose.
Absolutely, when she was knifed by the Pygmies in the Conservative Party, the most successful post-war leader that not just the Conservative Party's had, but the country has had. She restored Britain's fortunes after basically being the sick man of Europe after years and decades of socialism. And she had a proper free market conservative agenda.
And 3 landslide election victories.
Three victories.
The emancipation of the working class of this country, letting them buy their own council flats and council houses, and to think big for their families and their loved ones.
Absolutely. She also put Britain back on the world stage again. After the Falklands campaign, the rest of the world sat up in shock. They could not believe that this country, which had been on the slide since 1945, was able to undertake such a massive military operation so successfully. She was a very, very great leader, and she was knifed by her own party. And but there is a message here, and I very much support what Lord Howard said. You know, we've got to put the past behind us. The Conservative Party needs to unite. We were in tears, many of us, when the great lady was knifed. But we wiped the tears away, but, brushed ourselves down, and we got behind our friend John Major, whom we didn't entirely agree with.
And he achieved an unlikely election win.
Correct, he did, and that was 2 years after the defenestration or the assassination of Margaret Thatcher. So we have the same period to deal with for whoever takes over the leadership of the Conservative Party now to put us back in pole position for 2024.
However, Sir Gerald, it was Sir John Major that was not responsible for the ejection of Margaret Thatcher from power. I suppose the man with the bloody dagger was Michael Heseltine, and the Tory party never forgave him, and they did not grant him the leadership of the party, which, of course, was the role that he wanted. Will the Tory party forgive Rishi Sunak for his perceived role in getting Boris Johnson out this summer?
I don't know whether they will or not, but I think that they should. And I think we've got to look to the future. This is the most successful political party in the Western world. It's been going for 200 years. And as I say, it has been absolutely transformational, and even under Boris Johnson's leadership. Yes, we've had all this Partygate stuff, which I'm afraid I think is, and I know this might offend some people, but it was largely froth when you set it against the key issues. What were those key issues? First of all, he was elected on a policy of getting Brexit done. Not completed, the Northern Ireland fiasco, where the European Union is weaponising the border there, trying to punish us for having the temerity to leave the European Union. But he got a much better deal than Theresa May. Secondly, he got the vaccines right. Yes, there were disagreements on lockdown, but don't forget that the advice he was getting and ministers were getting from the medics was that you should lock down even further. And as a politician, to gainsay the medics is actually quite difficult. But thirdly, and I'm wearing my Anglo-Ukraine tie and a badge and my yellow tie and my blue shirt for Ukraine, he got Ukraine right. I was chairman of the All-Party Ukraine group. I know the country, and Boris Johnson's been brilliant on that.
And what about Penny Mordaunt? It's the imponderable now. It's the million-dollar question. If she hits 100 MPs between now and tomorrow at 2 p.m, do you think that she should go all the way, that the membership should decide? Or do you think she should concede in the national and party interest? That's if she hits 100.
I think that it's in the national interests and probably in the party's interests to get this sorted as quickly as possible. We do face problems, which perhaps we can come on to. But we do need to sort this quickly. On the other hand, there are the members of the party who pay their subscriptions, don't get an awful lot, bit of wine and cheese here and there, which actually they have to pay for, and the raffle tickets. But the one thing they do get is the ability to choose their leader. And I think that it probably would be politic to give the party in the country a say, as they had last time. But, of course, it did not quite work out as they had hoped.
If Penny Mordaunt hits 100, perhaps that would be good for Rishi Sunak, even if he does win, to have a mandate from the grassroots.
Yes, I think so. But I think it's also, as you suggest, it's important, given the situation we face, that we get this resolved as quickly as possible so that the new leader can set about sorting out the problems we have. And coming back to those problems, I do think the government has completely failed to make the case as to why we are feeling so much pain in the economy. This cost of living crisis is largely generated outside the United Kingdom by two men on the face of the planet. Xi in Beijing, through this plague, which has disrupted the whole of world trade and locked down businesses so nobody can buy the stuff because it ain't there to buy, and that which you can buy has shot up in price. And Putin in Moscow, and what he has done to his brutal aggression in Ukraine has not only pushed up the price of fuel, which affects everything that we buy in the shops, but has also, of course, affected the grain market, because 50% of Ukraine's normal production of about 60 million tons of grain a year, that has been cut by 50%, and much of that went to the third world. So this has been a massive disruption, and that is why our food prices are going up in the shop. That's why our fuel costs are going up.
So much of this is global, and it's not
correct.
Brexit.
It's not Brexit.
It's not Brexit. The Deutsche Bank predict that the German economy is set to shrink perhaps -3 or -4% next year. That can't be because of Brexit, can it? Now, listen, more of this developing story. If you're just joining us, Boris Johnson will not be our next Prime Minister. He's withdrawn from the race for number 10. And we have a statement on Twitter now from arguably the man that will be the next inhabitant of number 10, and that's Rishi Sunak. He's been on Twitter, and he has tweeted the following. Boris Johnson delivered Brexit and the great vaccine rollout. He led our country through some of the toughest challenges we've ever faced, and then took on Putin and his barbaric war in Ukraine. Sunak goes on to say, we will always be grateful to Boris Johnson for that. In the second part of his tweet, he goes on to say, although he has decided not to run for Prime Minister again, I truly hope he continues to contribute to public life at home and abroad. So there you go, Rishi Sunak there, with warm words for the ex-Prime Minister, our last Prime Minister but one, Boris Johnson, but he's out of the race. Sir Gerald Howarth is with me, a legend of the Tory party. Of course, he's out of the Commons now, and you've witnessed plenty of political dramas in your time. Can Rishi Sunak unite his party? You said he needs to, but this is a party that many consider now to be ungovernable.
Yes, indeed, and I'm horrified by the behaviour of so many members of Parliament.
Will there be a ceasefire?
Particularly the new ones who have hardly been there, ones who were elected in 2019.
The Red Wall Tories?
Many of those, they've hardly been there because of COVID. They've been at home. So they have not really got to understand the place. But it's up to them. They have a binary choice. Either get behind whoever is elected as the new leader, or they see not only their seats, but a whole load of other seats go, and replaced by a Labour Party, which would open the door to trade union militancy again. Their deputy leader called us scum, all of us, including Sir David Amess. We were all categorised as scum.
And by association, Conservative voters.
By association, Conservative voters, absolutely. And when I was at the party conference with friends the other day, we went to go and collect our passes, and there was a baying mob, largely middle-class people, but still baying mob with megaphones, shouting Tory scum, Tory. These are the people who would take over the country. A party which is led by a man not only supported Jeremy Corbyn, but seems incapable of defining what a woman is. I mean, the opportunities for wokeism, the opportunities for tax and spend on an even grander scale, the opportunities for even further levels of migration into our country. That is what we could expect from a Labour government, and the people of this country need to be clear about that. And the Conservative Party, therefore, has a duty to come together to make sure that it has a coherent vision to set before the people, a free market vision, a vision for a growth-led economy, as Liz Truss set out, which I thought was absolutely right, and remind people what the alternative is. But if they continue to fight each other people don't vote for a divided party.
And tell me about the composition of Rishi Sunak's cabinet. We can't assume he's going to be our next Prime Minister. Penny Mordaunt may pull one out of the hat, but we spoke to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who is brilliantly well connected, and he thinks it's more than likely that Rishi Sunak will be our next Prime Minister, either tomorrow afternoon or certainly by Friday. So assuming that is the case, tell me about the composition of that cabinet. I mean, is there a place for Michael Gove? Is there a place for Boris Johnson?
Well, that is up to the new Prime Minister, but I do
what
think
does he need
that...
to do? The
think,
perception, Sir Gerald, is that Boris's cabinet was full of Brexiteers and Boris loyalists. Some would argue a rather talentless bunch, but who had, essentially supported him in his leadership bid. And then, of course, it's been laid at the door of Liz Truss as well, that her cabinet was made up of those who got her the top job. So do you think that Sunak keep his enemies close?
I certainly think that you need a broad-based cabinet. Margaret Thatcher had a broad-based cabinet. She kept on people like Jim Pryor, who I thought actually at the time should have gone. But she was absolutely right, as it turns out. I was wrong. She was right to keep him on. So I think getting a cabinet of all the talents is very important. And of course, my son-in-law, the great James Cartledge, was a Remainer. He voted Remain. I'm a profound Brexiteer. But we live in harmony, not just in the same party, in the same family. And that is what this party has got to do. So I hope whoever takes over, whether it's Rishi Sunak or Penny Mordaunt, but whoever does, I hope that they will reach out to people on, as it were, on the other side. They will look for the best talent, and that they will then, the party will then unite behind them.
You've served many leaders. What do you make of Sunak? What are his strengths and weaknesses in a game of top trumps? Where does he win and where does he lose?
Well, I think he's very competent. And I think that one could expect from his leadership a competent administration. What he's got to be careful about is not being captured by any of the departments. That is a problem which I'm afraid some ministers get, that they get captured by their departments and they fail to pursue their own vision of what they want the department to do. As a minister, you have to be very firm in laying down the law. This is what we're going to do. I think he's also got to... I would like him to pick up, actually, what Liz Truss was suggesting, that vision of a low-tax, high-growth economy. I see absolutely no reason why he shouldn't do that. I think just loading up people with more and more taxes is not going to be the way out of this problem.
Is it a problem that his missus is a billionaire? Is it a problem that he hung on to his green card, which allowed him to work and live in America for longer than was necessary? Is it a problem that he's privately educated and that he's clearly a very privileged guy?
Well, certainly not a problem he was privately educated. Mr. Blair was privately educated. And indeed, I was privately educated. I went to
Jeremy Corbyn, I think, went to a prep school?
Absolutely. So there is no shame. Indeed, it's a great honour to have been privately educated. But as far as the other issues you mentioned, he's not the only one who had a green card. Other people did. But
could these be leveraged against Rishi Sunak as my viewers struggle to pay their energy bills to heat their homes in the winter?
No, that's just completely ridiculous. Because somebody is wealthy doesn't mean to say that they're incapable of doing the job. And of course, the one thing about our country is it's very different in the United States. But in our country, the Prime Minister is a member of Parliament. I remember Margaret Thatcher saying, when she went back to Finchley to do her surgeries, she saw the problems that people face right on her doorstep. Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt, they are doing the same thing. Members of Parliament are in touch with what's going on. This idea that members of Parliament aren't in touch is just for the birds. You don't hold your surgeries and not be in touch.